Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of Africa News. Our top stories for you this Friday. Boosting boots on the ground, France decides to send 400 more troops to Central African Republic in a bid to stem the ongoing violence there. Meanwhile, our reporters show us food is getting harder and harder to find. Mali's former Defence Minister General Camara is arrested in relation to the murder of paratroopers during the 2012 coup d'etat. And getting its school above water, a Nigerian slum uses plastic barrels to help educate its children. Well, we'll start this bulletin with the Central African Republic. France said Friday that it was sending 400 more troops to try and stop the massacres and restore public security. The extra soldiers bring French forces on the ground to 2,000. Paris called on the European Union to follow its lead and send soldiers soon. EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton said the Union was hoping to put a 1,000-strong force together. France's announcement came as more bodies were found in Bangui. Peacekeepers uncovered a mass grave at a military camp that had been occupied by Seleka rebels. Well, as the violence continues unabated, food is getting harder and harder to find. Marketplaces are deserted and supplies of staples have all but stopped. Local farmers find themselves leaving the relative security of refugee camps to try and till the fields, as our reporters Catherine Norris-Trent and Sylvain Rousseau report.
Despite the danger, these refugees are returning to the fields, trying to escape the cycle of hunger and poverty. We're on the outskirts of the Central African Republic's capital. Usually some 15,000 people would be working the land here. But with violence continuing, they're now just a few hundred.
It helps us. We're able to get something to eat. And it helps the Central African Republic population too, because no one's working. And vegetables are very expensive. That's why we're making this sacrifice, to have something to eat.
The farmers only dare to come back to their land in daylight. Still scared of being attacked by armed groups, they return to sleep in a refugee camp. This woman tells us she has little choice but to come here and work.
We haven't found anything to eat. If we earn money, we eat. If we don't, we go hungry.
Food shortages are already evident in Bangui. At the central market, the butcher's stalls are practically empty. Thousands of Muslim cattle herders have fled in fear, and the price of meat has trebled since December.
Now a beef carcass is so expensive. We pay 900,000 francs. Before it was just 300 or 250,000.
Extra supplies are starting to arrive. Dozens of trucks escorted by African Union troops have finally got through by road. The World Food Programme has launched a huge operation on a par with its aid to Syria, aiming to airlift in 1,800 tons of rice on almost daily flights for the next month.
There's clearly a food and nutrition crisis looming here in this country at the moment. The whole economy has been seriously disrupted. Traders have left, Muslim cattle herders have left, farmers have hardly been able to produce any food this year. So we're entering a very difficult phase that will last for several months now.
Emergency aid is now arriving in the capital Bangui, but in many parts of the country food remains scarce. And with the security situation far from under control, the risk of a food crisis in the Central African Republic remains very real.
Well, also on Friday, UNICEF issued a report saying that the unrelenting violence was not even sparing children. Over 100 minors have been murdered since the start of the year, according to their figures. Well, joining us now from the UN headquarters is our correspondent in New York, Jessica Lemazurier. Jessica, you know, some pretty horrifying reports there coming out of UNICEF saying that children are actually being targeted in this conflict.
You said it, Eve. This report makes for horrifying reading. At least 133 children have been killed or maimed over the last 2 months in the Central African Republic. And the most dreadful thing about this is that the report says that they have been intentionally targeted, and that in some cases they've even been intentionally beheaded and maimed. There have been cases where limbs have been chopped off. Children have also been caught in the crossfire, and frequently there's not enough time to get them to the hospital because the roads are blocked due to insecurity, and so they have had to have their limbs amputated as well. So children are really suffering in this conflict, especially as it escalates. The UN also says that there are as many as 6,000 children who've been recruited as child soldiers, Eve.
Really horrifying reports there, Jessica. Now, the UN and its bodies have spoken out, often calling on the international community to do more. But what is the UN planning?
Well, this coming Tuesday, we are expecting UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon to speak to the UN Security Council and propose some concrete solutions for the Central African Republic. We don't yet expect him to come out with his report on the situation there. That'll come a bit later on in the month. That could and probably will end up leading to a full-blown UN peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic as the situation there appears to be deteriorating. Just this week, Amnesty International used the words ethnic cleansing to describe what's going on there.
Jessica Le Mazurier for us in New York, thank you so much, and we'll no doubt be talking to you during the next week. Well, meanwhile, in Mali, a leading military advisor to the president has been arrested and charged with complicity in murder. A former defence minister, General Yamoussa Camara, is being questioned in relation to the deaths of 21 paratroopers back in 2012.
He's Mali's former defense minister and a leading military advisor in the current presidency. Now, Yamoussa Camara is behind bars, along with 3 other high-ranking military officials. They're charged with attempted murder over the deaths of several Malian soldiers. The case goes back to April 30th, 2012. That day, Red Beret soldiers loyal to the ousted President Amadou Touré attempted to take back power from General Sanogo. The Malian general had orchestrated a coup a month before with his Green Beret soldiers. But after the failed counter-coup, a number of Red Berets went missing. Yamoussa Camara, the defense minister at the time, tried to cover it up. But last December, a mass grave containing 21 bodies of Red Berets was discovered near Sanogo's former headquarters in Diago, near Kita. The soldiers were allegedly tortured and tied up before being thrown into the grave. Authorities arrested General Sanogo in November and charged him over the same abduction of the missing soldiers.
A final verdict in the ZOE'S case, the affair that saw a French-led NGO try and bring 103 children from Chad to France back in 2007. Eric Breteau and Émile Lelouch were given a 2-year suspended sentence on Friday. Breteau and Lelouch have always claimed that they were trying to save orphans that had crossed from war-torn Rwanda into Chad. But the Chadian government insists that the children were Chadian and had at least one parent. Well, to Nigeria now, and our next report takes to a non-fictional water world. The slum of Makoko floats on the fringes of Nigeria's capital, Lagos. This town on stilts is home to thousands of people who live in abject poverty. But now, plastic barrels may offer hope to the town's children.
It has been referred to as the Venice of Africa. But in the seething slum of Makoko in Lagos, comparisons with Italy's architectural gem start and finish at the water's edge. Under threat from both government evictions and flooding, people here live a precarious existence. Few can aspire to escape a life of poverty. There's currently just a handful of small schools to cater for the tens of thousands of people who live here. But rising from the fetid lagoon is a possible answer. A floating school constructed around 250 recycled plastic drums.
Living on water is actually a way of life. So, and the question is, how do you then improve that condition? How do you address the challenges of living on water in a safe, healthy and environmentally sound way?
And it's not just the children who will benefit. On 3 floors, this structure is also designed as a community space, or just somewhere for local fishermen to repair their nets. The architect would like to see the design rolled out across Makoko and even internationally for use in other waterfront communities threatened by rising water levels. Costing only $6,500 and funded largely by international NGOs, there's room for about 100 school children. But head teacher Noah Shemede says many more schools like this would be needed.
Every child in Nigeria deserves education wherever they are. We are on water. That doesn't mean that we can't go to school on water. We have to. We need more schools to accommodate thousands of children that are at home.
Perceived by authorities as a blight on Lagos's megacity ambitions, this water world is used to people turning the other way. but with an architectural gem of its own, finally some attention, and perhaps a symbol of hope for the people of Makoko.
Well, we're going to leave you now with a picture. The winner of the coveted World Press Photo Award, entitled Signal, it tells the story of a group of African migrants standing on the shore of Djibouti, their mobile phones held high in the hope of catching an inexpensive signal from neighbouring Somalia. It was taken by American photographer John Stanmeyer, and it's with that image that we're going to have to wrap up this edition. And see you all in an hour for more updates.